Let's just go through it. It's a great monster. I bet he's lonely and just wants to be your friend. Well, let's find out. Crunch, crunch, crunch. Oh no! Orat has transformed you into a new piece of recreational equipment. Along with finding this treatment extremely rude, you don't survive it. Whoa! Those big guys pack a powerful appetite. Oops. Hey there viewers, and welcome back to the channel. My name's Matt, and booting up on the screen is my 386 SX16. The 386 SX16 runs at 16 MHz, so it's a fairly low-end 386. The SX designator tells us that it is the cut-down version of the 386 as opposed to the DX, so it's a little bit slower, but initially it came in at a much nicer price point for the average user. Now today we'll be playing a point-and-click Sierra game, so we need to load our mouse driver, and we are going to be playing Space Quest 1 VGA. So let's get that loading up and get started. Now Space Quest 1 VGA was released in the early 90s and was a remake of the original Space Quest 1 from sort of the mid-80s, which we've also played through on this channel. It takes a little while to boot on this machine because the 386 SX was kind of a mid-range, not a low-end performer, but not a high-end one when this game was released. And here we go. So this game in particular has a fairly long loading in the intro screen sequence. You get the normal Sierra logo popping up here and the nice sort of background music, and then we play through a nice intro cinematic. Now in the early 90s, in this case 1991 as we see on the screen, Sierra were having a little bit of a renaissance of rebooting and remaking their earlier games in the higher technology, the VGA and the EGA sort of colour scheme. And again, this one has been pointed to point and click, whereas the original Space Quest 1 was all text parser. And you can see here they have gone all out using pretty much every single one of those 256 colours of VGA, and the result to me is absolutely fantastic. Compared to the original EGA version, it's crazy how much detail you get and how much colour and just everything just looks better. In terms of the storyline, this closely follows the original. There's pretty much no difference in most places, but it just gives you a bit more of an immersive experience with the better graphics and also somewhat better commentary, as we'll see. As you can see on the screen, the usual suspects from Sierra were involved with making this game. Ken Williams produced it. You've got Scott Murphy directing it, who was one of the two guys from Andromeda, in inverted commas, who were actually involved with all of the Space Quest games except Space Quest 6, I believe. Now again, this intro screen's a little bit longer, but again I think they did this to sort of showcase again the colours and the animations were achievable with the VGA. And again you've got the game designers Scott Murphy and Mark Crow, who were again the guys that basically did all the Space Quests except Space Quest 6. Art designer Douglas Herring, not sure, I think he was kind of potentially only on Space Quest 1 VGA, but someone correct me if I'm wrong down in the comments. And again, you sort of like, again, you know, get drawn into this game just by this intro, just sort of cycling through. You see all of the asteroids, the nice pretty colours, all of the space features all at once, and occasionally something funny like earlier you saw the keg. Now at this point we can see this yellow spacecraft coming through. That is the Arcada. And in the background here we have this kind of, I don't know, it looks almost like a grasshopper to me type creature ship floating on behind us, and that one we're going to find out later in the game is the Deltor. So at this point you can see that the Deltor is kind of shadowing the Arcada, and in a minute it's going to take a grapple on it. And again, in 1991 these were very impressive animations. I know by today's standards, if you're a younger viewer that is used to more modern games, you might be thinking, oh, this looks kind of like pixel art, very simple. And yeah, by today's standards it is, but back then it was crazy good. So, as we join our story, the crew of the Arcada is returning home to Xenon after a successful mission developing the star generator. Exhilarated by their accomplishments, they are oblivious to the fact that I didn't read that quite quick enough, but it was saying something about the ship was shadowing them. And there we go, the Deltor has grappled upon the Arcada and captured it. In the original Space Quest 1, the same thing happened, but we didn't get an intro screen showing it. It was just Roger Wilco basically in a closet and then an alarm coming on saying we'd been boarded. So this gives us a little bit more background. Okay, so if we really quickly click, we can see that a somewhat spastic research droid blows by in a tiz. Perhaps you could provide some relaxation therapy instruction to reduce its level of tension. You are startled by the sound of an alarm. Breaking through it, the intercom crackles with a frightened voice of a technician shouting that the Arcada has been boarded by unknown intruders. The transmission ends abruptly in a soundstorm of white noise, soon overtaken by the cold din of silence.
Destruct sequence is engaged. 15 minutes till detonation.
So you hear the overly cheerful voice of the ship's computer say, "Destruct sequence engaged, 15 minutes till detonation." I always like that they actually put that little soundbite in of the voice. I thought that was kind of cool. Now, I might just quickly save it here, just due to the fact, and you can see I've played this through many, many times. I'm just going to call this Matthew at the start, because we only have 15 minutes to kind of explore around here, and if we take a bit too long, we're going to end up basically with the ship blowing up. So this has the usual Sierra point and click of the SCI era. You've got walk, look, interact, talk to, smell, taste, your inventory, and then the controls to save and that sort of thing. Smell and taste, like Space Quest 4, are kind of just there for fun. We might use them a little bit. I haven't really done that too much in this game, but you can do things like smell the red alert sign. You take a whiff and notice a smell common to electronics which haven't had a power applied to them in quite a while. And likewise, we can also look at the sign. The light's flashing. Let's see. That seems to ring a distant bell. Oh yeah, now you remember. It means that all living things now aboard the ship could die due to some disastrous situation that currently exists. Whatever the case, some personal hide preservation is in order. Alright, so let's get into this, and we're going to start by wandering off to the left. We're in kind of like in a split level view at the moment. We're on the upper level of the Arcada, and you can sort of see the lower level down here. We can only interact with the level we're currently on. Now let's have a look at this room. This is where the sophisticated electronics for the complete data archive system are housed. And if we go here, we can see this is the operational console of the data archive unit. There is a CRT and a chair. So CRT is cathode ray tube for the younger viewers, which is basically the old type of monitor. You can also see this little droid thing hovering here. This is a Model DX cartridge retrieval unit. Its function is to retrieve and return cartridges from and to the storage unit. It is currently empty. And if you remember from Space Quest 1, the original, it was also called a Model DX, I believe, but it was basically just a pixelated box, but now it's still this fancy robot thing. Cool. Now, this is basically the library. There's not a lot we can do here right at the second, so we're just going to walk out this door. We've got the very quintessential Star Trek swoosh noise on the doors, which many people will recognise. And you hear footsteps. So we need to kind of get moving here. So you'll see there's some Sarien guards just appearing on the right. And if we hang around too long, we basically get shot. Now over here we can see there is a deceased crewmate of ours, so let's have a look. It's all that remains of Jerry, one of the few techno-dudes aboard who sometimes tolerated your company. Your low clearance excluded you from visiting him during the performance of his duties in the elegant lower level airlock of the Arcada. So he's got access to areas we don't. So if we search, you search the body and find a key card. So now in our inventory, we've got this very elaborate looking key card that Not sure what it resembles. To me, it almost looked like a hairbrush or something, but that's a key card there. And this little dude here, I think is Buckazoids. Yep, we have 3 Buckazoids. Cool. So let's just save it here. We're just going to call this one Matthew with key card. So in typical Sierra fashion, there are many ways to get killed in this game, and also to render it kind of useless and forget an item and then have to come way back. So it pays to save often. So now, just for fun, you hear footsteps. Let's just hang around here and see what happens when the Sariens come. If I'm really quick with the eye icon, we might be able to see something funny. I can hear them. Man, they give us a long time on this one. Oh, here we go. Ooh. The aliens observe their handiwork briefly before looking for others to process in similar fashion. As you lie on the floor in smouldering carbogelatinous heap, you just can't help but wonder why you bothered getting up this morning. Classic Sierra there. So yeah, the Sariens are not to be messed with. Alright. Let's head back towards the library. So they give us plenty of time walking in this direction, as we just observed, so we're not going to have any problem getting in here. I always thought it strange that the Sariens are coming from that side and then we're walking that way. Shouldn't we intercept them? But I guess the limitations with the game and, you know, not having a million corridors, they just kind of use a bit of poetic license there. Okay, so as the door opens, the door opens. A man you recognise as one of the head lab scientists stumbles into the room. He appears to be in serious need of some Abdoseal abdomen filler. Abdomen filler. A lot of words in this game. After only a few steps, he hits the floor with a disconcerting thud. Alright, so if we go over here, let's see if we can talk to him. His lips move. The star generator is in danger. The Arcada is under attack. You'd better get off this scowl if you value your life, Wilco. Just before his systems cease all functions short of decay, he looks over towards the shelves full of cartridges and utters stars. With one last gasp, his lifeless form slumps to the floor. Okay, so he mentioned the word stars. So let's just call this one Matthew at library stars. Now this was the copy protection of this game. So if we go, you know, thinking about Space Quest 1 EGA, we'd simply go to the thing and type stars. And in this one, it's a little more sophisticated. So if we use this little console, and we can sort of have a look. Actually, it doesn't really let us look. Okay, so if we look hard enough, this is the data cartridge retrieval system. And this little thing pops up here. And you'll notice these symbols are quite reminiscent of the ones in Space Quest 4 for the time pod. So now we need to get the manual and we need to look up the code for stars. Okay, so if I open up my little book here to the correct page and find stars, we see that it is this II H bar chair thing. What have we got? The 2 I's with the 2 dot thing and the E. That should be stars. Cartridge found, now retrieving. Now if you type in the wrong code at this point, I think it just says data cartridge not found. It doesn't give you like a dud or anything like that. But without this cartridge, you cannot finish the game. So we'll take the cartridge. Another little trick there is you can actually just click exit at this point and the dude just stands there holding the cartridge and you never actually receive it. So just bear that in mind if you're playing through. So now we'll just do we'll do an override on that one, because there's not much to be gained. Awesome. Okay, so now we've got a data cartridge. So let's venture down to the lower level. Now, when it mentioned earlier from your crewmate that said you didn't have access to the lower level, it actually meant the lower level, which we will see in a second. This sort of lower level here actually isn't a problem. Failing to notice anyone or anything in the room, the Sarien guards decide to check elsewhere. Way to go, Roger. Cool. So we'll just look to the left here just for fun. There's nothing actually over here we need to interact with, but we can see there's another elevator sort of to the top, which we don't need to use. And this whole thing forms a great big circle, so if I went up that elevator, you could walk around to the other side of the library, basically where we started. Oh, you hear footsteps, so we better just quickly get into the elevator. And then these dudes should just hopefully walk away. Which they do. Cool. Alright. So down here. A cursory glance indicates that Dave, a lab technician, is dead. Normally you wouldn't be able to tell, except that his intestines are hanging out of the scorched opening where his abdominal wall used to be. You remember that he was forced to serve in the Xenon National Guard, but he wasn't bitter. And over here. This is one of the head research scientists, Blanche. You wanted to get to know her a little better. However, seeing her ruptured chest wall reveals more about her than you're hoping to learn. The writers for this game were kind of on point with their commentary, I always thought. LucasArts always suffered a little bit for that, in terms of... It got to the point, but I always found Sierra was funnier. Okay, so let's look around in here. This is the Star Generator Development Laboratory. Due to your incredibly low security clearance, you've never had access to this room. What a mess. Wreckage clutters the middle of the floor. A pair of lab workers have been blasted from the roster of the living. You're glad someone else has to clean this up. Alright, so we'll just have a look to see if they're carrying anything. Yet another crewman's motionless body reduces the shine of the floor wax. Hugh doesn't look too neat and clean with his lungs hanging out like that. And then over here. The lifeless body of Randy, one of the lab technicians, lies sprawled at your feet. Those laser blasts are nasty. Why? You can't distinguish one exposed organ from another. Now, notice there's this little flashing thing here, sort of getting our attention. Let's have a look. You find a small but heavy device affixed to the base of the Star Generator platform. It appears to be magnetic. That must be how the aliens upset the force field protecting the unit. That could be useful. So you can hear in the background that little ding-ding. That means we got a point or so for basically picking that up. And if we look at the base here, the base of the Star Generator research pedestal has apparently been trashed by the vandals who stole the generator. I don't think there's too much else to look at in here, so we are all good. Maybe another, just a quick save in case we run out of time. Call this one Matthew with magnets. Alright, let's venture back out into the corridor. Oh, another droid. Okay, so let's head over here, basically to the east. And we're going to pass underneath the library at this point. I always thought it was kind of neat how they put these perforations in the floor so you could see where you were going. But in reality, that would be a horrible design. Oh, another person. This is Stuart, one of your crewmates. He appears to be non-functional. You used to kid about him when he was alive, but now it's true. Okay, so we need to get going here really quickly to this elevator. I think we're just going to make it. Okay, so this takes us down to the lower level. We still don't quite need the key card yet. So down here you can see this sort of futuristic sci-fi looking thing, like this screen with a wiggle. Let's have a look. The monitor gives a readout about the ship's status. Only the lab scientist really knew exactly what it monitored. And over here, a pair of viewing ports protrude from the materials testing device. And not sure we can look at, oh, who knows what this is. But again, you've got this lovely graphic sort of environment here you can sort of just look at and appreciate. Now this next bit always used to get me when I first started playing this game, and I might just save it here in case I stuff it up, which I probably won't. So this one we'll just call Matthew lower level. Sorry I'm saving this a lot, but man, it makes editing this video much easier if you stuff up. Okay. So down here, we've got this kind of bit of a parody going. Now you see, you hear footsteps. Ideally we need to get off to the right because you can sort of see this room is kind of like a semicircle at the top. If you try and walk off to the right, you won't make it, no matter what you do. But what you need to do is quickly get behind this little panel. Let's see if I can look at these guys. These guys look scary, but then don't most other beings packing weapons? Alright, excellent. Now in here, you can sort of see we've got a joystick looking thing, we've got a mouse, and the keyboard, which kind of looks like a, I don't know, a synthesizer or a keyboard. But this keyboard was used in the development of the Star Generator. It has since been placed here to be out of the way. It has no function. The architects must have been low on oxygen when they came up with this design scheme for the compartment. It's a giant tribute to an ancient, but still functional control device. On the screen is some green dude you've never seen the likes of. He seems to be talking, but the audio is out in this area of the ship. So yeah, the architect's being low on oxygen, that's a good one. Alright, let's head across. We're running out of time here a little bit. We've still got 6 minutes 56, so we're going to make it. So over this side, we've got this thing that looks like a wave, which is kind of cool. You always meant to ask one of the technicians what this thing is. However, you procrastinated a bit too long in this case. It's either an ocean in a bottle or a model of your stomach as the deadline draws near. Then over here on this panel we can take a look. These buttons are locked in position. It's probably just as well. You might live longer due to having no clue as to their purpose. Now it's funny how you can just sort of click generically on this and it gives you that, but if you click very specifically where these two buttons are, it says bay doors open and close. If we hit open, you'll see over here, bay doors will pop open. And if you don't do that step, you're kind of in trouble because you can't launch the pod in a minute. Alright, so here is the door that requires a key card. If we don't have it, basically it says this elevator requires a key card to enter. So let's get our key card out of our inventory, slot her in. You slide the key card into the slot. The lock releases with a satisfying click and the elevator doors slide open. Okay. So here we are sort of in the downstairs, I guess you'd call it the pod room. So in here, there's a few things you can do. You notice a drawer and a button on this elaborate, it almost looks like a sandstone construction thing. Kind of weird, so let's give the button a push. You notice some sort of gadget in the drawer, which we take, which is great. Now for the rest of this, again, I'm going to do my famous save. This one we're just going to call Matthew at airlock, because I'm pretty sure we can do some funny stuff down here. Now down here on this panel, if we have a look, the control panel has many confusing gauges on it. The only one you can read says, "Caution, launch bay decompressed." Well, let's see what happens when we try and enter the launch bay. That concludes your experiment on the effects of vacuum on the unprotected human body. Wasn't that fun? Classic. Okay, so obviously we're going to need some sort of spacesuit to get out here. So in this lockery thing, which I think that sort of logo on there had some sort of Star Trek reference, or maybe even Star Wars, but maybe someone can let me know in the comments, but I just remembered as I clicked on it. A spacesuit hangs in the closet. A helmet sits on the top shelf. Now I think it was this Space Quest. If we take the helmet first, it does something funny. Oh, damn. I swore there was one where you could take the helmet and it pops it on your head without the spacesuit and you stand there looking kind of strangely. Maybe it was Space Quest 6. Okay, but yeah, does anyone know the significance of this logo? It looks familiar to me, maybe from Star Trek or something like that. Pop it down in the comments. Alright, maybe if we look at it, maybe it tells us something. The image on the closet door looks familiar, but you can't quite place it. There we go. Alright, at this point, pretty much all we can do now is leave. So this time we won't explode as we walk out into the launch bay. Now, you can see this Sarien guy up here. I'm not sure it tells us much. Some alien anchor being is broadcasting a message about the stolen star generator. There's a bit of propaganda going on. This is the cavernous vehicle bay. An escape pod rests on the launch rails at the end of the platform. Bay doors at the end of the rails allow access to the emptiness beyond.
5 minutes.
Cool.
Till destination.
Actually, I don't want to quite look at the pod yet. What I would like to do is very quickly... Okay, there's a lot of fun wicket to be had here. Now, I'm pretty sure with this one... Does that artificial gravity do the job or what? I always loved how they just put these little things in just to make it humorous. So yeah, watch the edge. But now let's basically just get in the pod. As you can see, the loading time on the 386SX is a little bit longer, but it's not ridiculous. It's quite playable. Alright, so in the pod here, you guessed it, I'm going to save it. So, the pod, there's many ways of kind of stuffing this up. So, first off, you've got this seatbelt here. Let's just leave that unbuckled for now and see what happens. If we look, dials galore populate the instrument console of the pod cabin. And then we have these 3 buttons. The auto nav button, when operative, it allows the pod to navigate to the closest habitable planet. This button is not to be pushed at any time. This is the power button for the escape pod. Well, let's try to press this button. This option works better with the power on. Okay, let's put the power on. And now let's press that button. You'll need to leave the launch bay first. Okay. Press the throttle. And then we get, unfortunately, no real cutscene, but buckle up for safety. Buckle up. So, we need to wear the seatbelt. So, let's wear the belt. Hit the power. And hit the throttle. We still had 4 minutes 30 to spare here, so we had plenty of time. As you slide the throttle forward, you can feel the Arcada start to shake. Okay, so we should be loading. Here we go. Now let's just give it a quick save, overwriting that one I just made. Alright, so now let's hit the button we should never press. You have a feeling you shouldn't have pressed that button. I always love these sort of scrolling RGB graphics they put in these. Very similar to Space Quest 4, except they've put a few more sort of triangles and stuff in. Ouch! I think we've got some serious organ damage here. All of them, of course, could have been easily replaced in the time period from which you've just arrived. However, a quick scenery check reveals that you're now in the Dark Ages. The only transplant you'll get here is from a carcass to a spit over a flame. As you draw the few final lungfuls of oxygen through your newly acquired sucking chest wound, you gleefully notice your final resting place is near beautiful Nottingham Castle, universally renowned for its inclusion in Sierra's conquest of the longbow. Oh my goodness, you're shocked to hear some highly inflammatory language making its way into your ordinary auditory canals. Must be some uncivilized ruffians in the nearby pub. Well, you're dead again. We even warned you not to push that button. You have no one to blame but yourself for having to sit through a plug for another fine Sierra product. Maybe you'll follow directions next time. Thanks for playing, and all that stuff. I always loved that one. Thought that was quite good. Alright, so in the original Space Quest 1, I believe it launched you into Daventry for King's Quest 1, whereas this one they swapped it to Conquest of the Longbow. King's Quest 1 was actually remade in EGA format, I do believe, as well, by Sierra. I think that was one of the first remakes they actually did of an original game. But Conquest of the Longbow was remade about the same time. Actually, I think it might have been just made. I don't think there was an original for that one. About the same time as this game was released. You know, you can see this time we're not actually travelling through time in the pod to the Dark Ages, which is good. And we are arriving on a planet. Thank you for flying our Carter Getaway Podlines. It's nearly been a pleasure serving you. Tell a friend if you've got one. Classic. Alright, so at this point, all we can really do is take the seatbelt off. Now, like in the original game, we need to pick up a couple of items before we wander off from this area. But unlike the original Space Quest 1, where the windshield's broken here, it is very obvious there is a bit of broken glass, whereas in the other game you had to be very specific where you looked and what you asked for. Likewise with the first aid kit, we can actually see it here. The rugged landing liberated the survival kit from its mounting fixture. Sweet. And down here, so let's try and taste it just for fun. No, it doesn't let you. Smell it? No. Yeah, the taste and smell thing I always found a bit weird in these games. Kind of worked for Space Quest 4, but with this one, it kind of, there's not a lot of food related stuff. I guess you can just use it on everything random, but yeah. Anyway, so here we are, we're on Kerona. Definitely time for a save. And we're going to call this on Kerona. Excellent. Let's have a look at the pod. The engines seem to have performed their jobs well. They will now stand silent for eternity. Loitering about the horizon is the second and closest moon of Kerona. It is much less hospitable than the sphere you presently roam. What about sand? This ridge of sand helps stop the pod. Alright, so the only way to really traverse here is going east, but let's go west. Let's see what happens. Okay, so that dude doesn't look too friendly. Whoa, those big guys pack a powerful appetite. Did you feel the way that thing just chomped right through your skeletal system? That had to hurt. The Grell burps in solitary satisfaction. He doesn't often get nice warm meals like you. So yeah, Grell basically cuts no slack. So we can only go east. If you go sort of north or south, the same thing happens. one thing I'm curious about, because I've never actually tried it in Space Quest 1 VGA, is whether you can get hit by the asteroid wandering out sort of to the northeast of here. Let's try that later on. But nonetheless, for now, we consider this a sort of bony structure. A wide selection of skeletal accessories awaits your perusal. Vertebrae, ribs, and who knows what else rest upon the Keronian soil. The average height of this structure looks to be at least 7 meters. Good thing you didn't meet this thing in its heyday. And oddly enough, a plant grows in an isolated spots in this inhospitable environment. So we can grab some of the plant. You snag a small cluster of leaves from the gooey plant. Kind of doesn't matter if you do or don't. You do need some of this plant matter later on, but you can get it later on when you need it. So that stuff sticks worse than fortnight-old undergarments. It's a good thing your gloves are Tefloid coated. Okay. Now, I'm not sure if you can look into this hole. This cave is very small and empty, not unlike your grey matter. Classic. Alright. So here we've got much the same. We can only kind of walk around the perimeter of this. If we go any further, Grell just gets us. So we just have to kind of stick to where we are. You can kind of see there's like a limb or a hand or something here. Alright, so if we're going to do this in sequence, we need to walk up here and, ooh, out of the corner of your eye, you spot an object hurtling from the greenish atmosphere towards the parched surface you currently occupy. I always love the chrome appearance of this thing. You can see the sky and the sand. Rats. If the eyes don't deceive, that's a Sarien Spider Droid. They must have detected the escape pod leaving the Arcada. The Spider Droid must have been sent along to settle any unfinished business. After the jarring impact, small panels open through which legs sprout. You recall reading an old issue of Space Piston magazine that this droid was designed to seek out organic life forms and self-destruct when close proximity to the target has been achieved. So that guy's going to wander around now and try and find us, which is kind of annoying, but also kind of useful. So we'll just save this as Matthew on Kerona again. And we're going to wander up here. Okay. So you see we've got a bit of a dinosaur head thing going. We're going to go down into that cave later on. But for now we don't actually know what the purpose of that cave is. I'd say that the widening of those cracks is an excellent indication that this thing is not a truly stable unit. And you don't hate the way that it makes your brain bounce around like a handball in all that spare cranial space. Now, the nice thing about the VGA remake is it's a little bit quicker to kind of walk around this structure in some respects. And you can't actually fall off it even if you click kind of poorly, which just makes the game progress a little bit quicker. Now, if you've ever tried to play Space Quest 1 VGA on a faster computer, so like maybe a Pentium or something like that, you'll find the Spider Droid is really painful and pops up so much that you really have trouble actually evading it later in the game. Okay, so here we've reached the end. It looks interesting. Although hard to tell from where you're standing, it may be a sign. If you got closer, maybe you could read it. Alright, let's get closer. Hey, what's the deal here? That elevator doesn't lower, it sucks. Alright, so here we are kind of in the subterranean area. Just have a look around. This is one end of what appears to be a large cavern. The only way to go is to the left. And you can kind of see this purple thing here. The stalagmite has obviously been broken loose previously and set back in place. The being responsible, most likely your Keronian counterpart, tried to fool everyone else using some sticky gunk to hold it together, like that would actually fool anyone. So we can take this. You flex those incredible muscles you wish you had, but you're barely able to snap loose the previously fractured stalagmite tip. You can notice there's this gooey stuff here. Basically that's the same as the plant matter that we've got here. So you either took it on the surface or you take it here, it doesn't matter. Now the trick to the next screen, when it pops up, is we have this grate. So if we have a look, the grate is made of metal and seems to be fastened securely to the floor. It is too dark to see down through the grate. However, an odd smell emanates from the depths of the pit. So this one, let's just get a little closer. Oh, there we go. And we'll just save it here as, let's go Matthew at, not quite at the acid drips yet, but we're at the grate. It's a great monster. I bet he's lonely and just wants to be your friend. Well, let's find out. Crunch, crunch, crunch. You've been snatched out of existence by the tentacled beast luring beneath the grate. You feel the painful sting of digestive fluids. Don't stop now. We're having so much fun watching you. Okay, so he doesn't just want to be our friend. Now, in Space Quest 1 Original, you used to have to walk right on the edge over here by the edge of this sort of cliff thing. On this one, we have to use the sticky plant. And I guess the reason for that is with the point and click, it's a little bit harder to specify exactly where to go. So now his tentacles are kind of stuck. We can easily walk past. I always thought the ambience of this cave was kind of cool too. It does really capture that damp sort of human environment. This is a pulsating steam geyser, and it's an odd closed door with no apparent mechanism for opening it. Now, notice the geyser is kind of conical in appearance. We've got this plug here. And there we go. Alright, now I've just thought of a use for the taste. So let's give this a save. That's fine. You gaze intently at the greenish pool of liquid, the first real sign of moisture on the planet. The pool seems to have no bottom. The gentle dripping has a soothing effect on your frazzled nerves. A small plume of mist rises as each drop hits the pool surface. Let's give it a taste. You lean over to drink from the tempting pool of liquid. As your lips touch the fluid, you feel a pain which could be likened to kissing a lit rocket nozzle. Now you know when they say, don't drink the water. That's right, you have no head. That darn pool must have been filled with acid. You obviously can't go on living that way. Now, some of these lines are taken directly from Space Quest 1 EGA, the original. And some of the lines are kind of added extra. That one there is an example of taken straight from the original, but it was a great line, so I can see why they repeated it. Now, I think with this one, we can just go sort of down here to the left from what I remember. We don't need to go around the elaborate sort of labyrinthy thing in the original. And here we have the classic, I guess, laser beam gate. Now, I always wondered about this. You can sort of see that you could just climb up this cliff thing, or you could even jump over this. It's not that tall. So I'm not sure what it's supposed to really, be stopping. But let's just go through it. Well, Scott, it looks like Roger has done it again yet another time. It sure seems that way. For those who might have missed that last move by Roger, or if like me, you just want another look at it, let's roll it again. You've got to give some high marks for truly fine execution. We'll have to give that a strong 9.8. You've found quite a number of forms to transform yourself into. This is the first time you've been wafer style. Classic. Okay. So, just like in the original, we need to use our little bit of glass. You've quite cleverly turned the beam upon itself, frying and fusing it into a state of inoperability. Excellent. So now we can just try to trek around to the upper level up here. I don't know if there's anything to be said about looking at the cave. You're in the leftmost room of this cavern. Standing central at the juncture of the lower and upper pathways are two odd-looking units obviously placed there on purpose. They're no longer in operation thanks to you. Cool. Alright, so now, a lot of people get stuck on this part, and I'm not exactly sure why. It's not too difficult, but this is the acid drips. So, let's see. This will be at acid drips. So you can kind of see on the floor here, there's these little like black circles where the acid drips are going to land. If you time this carefully, you can see that there's this hole here, and it's dripped through it. We can walk to this clear zone. We can wait for these two drips. There you go, walk to this clear zone. Oops. You are unpleasantly surprised by a drop of searing acid which bores its way to your feet. Now that's some seriously deep pain. Alright, so I did stuff that up a little bit, but it proves a point. So that's what happens if your acid drip actually gets you. But if I'm a little bit more careful, I should be able to get to that clear zone. I just need to time this correctly. So that, and I think we're good. Nope. Okay, proved myself wrong here. I think I need to be a little bit more patient in the middle zone. So once we get to here, we're kind of good for a second. So those two drips go. I think we have to go now. No? Okay, harder than I remember. Okay, go to there. Oh, I think we don't want to go up. We just want to go straight. So I want those two drops to land. I think now if we kind of go for it, there we go. Okay, a little bit confusing. You sort of don't want to head to that vacant sort of area up on the top right. Perfect. All right. Now the next bit is where we kind of go off into this abyss up here. This is another large chamber in the underground complex. Paths run along the top and bottom ledges. So, a couple of fun things we can do here. We're just going to save it yet again. We'll just call it acid drips, close enough. Now, in our little bindle of stuff, we have this gadget. This is some sort of gadget. You're not sure what it does exactly, but it has a switch. Let's just leave it off and see what happens. As soon as you enter the room, you find yourself surrounded by darkness. Suddenly, you become aware of the fact that you cannot move or speak. A strange, unknown force has taken over. A massive holographic image appears before you. It begins to speak. The job je le fudge is a fudge. Jou wufuns ek wukkel willow look for sigil quiff. Origin maj juwage purf rot purtquat. Whoop ip de op eo for term wijibo. As a apparent result of your inability to understand the alien tongue, the being has sent you back to the surface. You need some kind of help with that. Now that's just a little bit of a clue as to what we missed. So if we go back, that little gadget we had is actually a translator. So let's give that button a press. You switch the gadget on. Again, we get the same text box there. It begins to speak. So, you have found your way to my hallowed chamber. Fortunately, there is much more to you than meets the eye. I've been monitoring your travels on our planet. It appears that you're up the proverbial estuary without a means of locomotion. In other words, you're on the Leather Express, slapping the dogs, pounding the sand you'd kill for a fine ride. You're in obviously need in transportation. Let us see if you're worthy of our assistance. On the surface lives a beast called Orat. He proves to be a bit of an annoyance on occasion. Dispose of him and bring back evidence of your conquest. Only then will I deal with your plight. Good luck, strange one. Bring to me evidence of the beast Orat's demise and we'll talk. With that, you find yourself transported back to the surface. So yeah, quite a bit more context when you can actually understand what the dude is saying. Cool, so this is definitely worthy of a save here because that droid is running around. Where are we at? So, let's see. Not after Orat yet, we're back at surface again. Okie dokie. So, couple of ways we can do this. Both ways work, and if you've watched my playthrough of Space Quest 1, the original, and if you haven't, I think it'd be a great idea if you do, because it gives it a bit more context. One way is optimal, one way is kind of suboptimal, but I don't know if they net you any difference in points. Well, in this game, I'm not 100% sure at all. However, let's explore both of them. So, the guy mentioned Orat, he lives in a cave on the surface. Well, we saw that dinosaur head thing sticking out the ground just up here. So let's have a look at it. This must be the skull previously attached to the rest of the mammoth bones partially assembled here. So if we kind of just walk into here, just off the street, and we need to quickly get behind this rock. Now, if we don't, he'll just eat us, which we'll explore in just a second for fun. But at first, I need to save this as, let's call this at Orat 1. Alright, so if we just kind of wander out here, just give him a friendly hello. Oh no! Orat has transformed you into a new piece of recreational equipment. Along with finding this treatment extremely rude, you don't survive it. It's tough to make friends around here. Relax, stretch out, restore, and let's get back to it. There's adventuring to be done. Okay, so that's obviously not going to work. Now, the other way that actually does work is if we open up... Ah, you're far too busy for that now. Damn, we can't open up our survival kit. We're going to have to go back outside, which luckily we can't do. Oh, actually, yes, we can. He's just kind of not paying attention. Alright, so let's head back out. And I'm actually going to save it here again, just over that file, just because it'll save a bit of time. Alright, so let's open up our survival kit. Upon opening the survival kit, you discover a Xenon army knife and a canister of dehydrated water. Let's look at that water. The can label says, Pelvatron dehydrated water, H2. All you add is air, makes 10 gallons. Caution, do not attempt to open or rupture container. Misuse could result in personal injury and or flash flooding. Okay, so it says do not rupture this container, so it's under pressure. So let's see what happens if we throw that container to our little friend Orat over here. So if we grab the Pelvatron dehydrated water, it's kind of a funny joke in itself. If you get it, you get it. Orat, always in the mood for a snack, snatches the can out of the air with his spacious oral cavity, chews and swallows it. He notices a rumbling deep within his abdomen. Cool. And down here on the floor, this gleaming chunk of Orat's anatomy is the only visible proof that Orat ever existed. After that explosion, it's amazing that there's that much left. And we can grab this Orat part, and we're good to go. You reach down and take the Orat part in your hand. Some of it oozes to fill the space between your fingers. So that was the first method of disposing of Orat. Not the most optimal method, but again, it will work and we'll get through the game. If you want to see the second method, I'm just looking at the time here, we're up to 57 minutes, so this is going to be the end of part 1, and you can catch that second method in part 2 of this playthrough. At this point, I want to thank you so much for watching. I really hope you're enjoying this playthrough of Space Quest 1 VGA and the little comparison as the Space Quest 1, the original. If you've enjoyed the video, please consider giving it a thumbs up. It really does help the channel to grow. And if you've also enjoyed the video, check out my other playthroughs. Not only have I done Space Quest 1, the original, but all of the others, 2, 3, 4, and 5. 6 is probably upcoming at a later date. Thanks again so much for watching.